Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football Thursday night. Patt Narduzzi, this Pitt Panthers team just laid on Syracuse in a football game where I think we were all trying to figure out just how good Pitt could be in the ACC. I think we got our answer. And I think what stood out to me the most about Pitt Thursday night is this is a football team that can win a game in a lot of different ways. I think up until this point, and maybe before that Cal game, you kind of thought, all right, Pitt, really good offense, can put up a lot of points. How good is their defense? Can they lean on their defense to win games, or are they just going to have to win games in kind of a shootout fashion? You look at that game against Cal, then you look at this game against Syracuse and say, this is a Pitt team that they can win in different ways. Like, yeah, they can go score to score with a lot of college football teams across the country, but they can also win a football game off the backs of their defense. That's exactly what they did Thursday night. That was, in my opinion, a master class of really defensive scheme and play calling against Syracuse. I mean, Patt Narduzzi and this defensive coaching staff, the amount of different looks, blitz packages, coverage packages they threw at Kyle McCord. Kyle McCord was in a torture chamber all night. I think this was an extremely impressive performance by Pitt, but I think most importantly shows they're a team that can win in a lot of different ways. And quite frankly, are going to be a really dangerous team in the month of November in the ACC. Fired up to get into, just a few takeaways that we had from this Pitt team. Now, before we get into it, as always, just want to say thank you to you guys. This was a really fun game to preview. And I thought how we previewed this football game, we kind of thought it was going to be a quarterback duel. That's not really what we saw because of how one-sided this Pitt defense was playing on Thursday night. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. This Pitt team, it's going to be a fun team to talk about in the month of November with a lot of big games where you look up and say, Pitt's inserted themselves into that college football playoff conversation. I think we got to start with this Pitt defense. You force 5 turnovers, 3 of which you score on in return for touchdowns. It doesn't get any better. I mean, Pitt didn't need to score a single point on offense if they didn't want to. They would have won this football game 13-21. I think where it starts is with this Pitt defense schematically, where they gave so many different looks. It's fair to say they were very aggressive Thursday night against Syracuse, but didn't really give up any explosive plays. Like when you are playing that aggressive and going for negative plays and trying to create turnovers, oftentimes you might be able to create some negative plays and create some turnovers, but you're also giving up some explosive plays on the back end. Pitt really didn't do that in the first half. They were being aggressive. They were sending extra guys. They were leaving some guys out on islands on the boundary. Syracuse couldn't create any separation. And so not only was it a dominant performance by the front seven, you register 4 sacks, 9 tackles for loss. I think Syracuse has some really good pass catchers on the outside, whether it's Pena, whether it's Aronda Gaston, whether it's Jackson Meeks. And this Pitt secondary just gave them nowhere to breathe down the football field. So when you're bringing all that pressure, leaving your guys in some one-on-one situations, you got to be confident that you have the defensive backs to do that, especially against a Syracuse team that I think has legitimate playmakers. Pitt was able to do that. I think the front seven is really coming on. You take a look at Syracuse, they had 6 rushing yards all night. They at times tried to slow the football game down. It was kind of getting out of their hands a little bit. This is a Syracuse team that wants to throw the football a lot. They tried to slow it down. They tried to run the football, and they just couldn't against this Pitt team. Not only did you have difference makers stepping up, and this is not a Pitt defense that they got some really good players. I think we all know that. I think we all saw that Thursday. But I think more importantly, it's a collective effort. I mean, they just got guys making plays at all 3 levels. A lot of college football defenses will have just a singular top 10 NFL draft pick or a couple of really good players, but also have kind of some holes and some liabilities in their units. Where's the liability with this Pitt defense? I thought the front seven was dominating, not only getting after the passer, but stopping the run. I thought on the back end, your defensive backs were certainly winning today against some talented pass catchers that Syracuse had. I think a guy like Donovan McMillan, I don't think Donovan McMillan was the best football player for Pitt last night. My biggest take was when you have such a utility chess piece in that back end, A guy that can play the single high safety spot, the guy that can walk into the box and be a run support, a guy that can come off on pressures, a guy that can match up with someone like Rhonda Gadsden in man coverage. When you have a chess piece like that in your defense, it's so easy to get creative when you have a guy that can do so many different things for this Pitt unit. Again, I thought the players played really well, but Pat Narduzzi and this defensive coaching staff, it was a master class. I mean, you were mugging the line of scrimmage, you were dropping out of it, you were playing some cover zero. It didn't get much better, and that's a quarterback in Kyle McCord who's played really good football up until this game. Yeah, Kyle McCord was known for putting the ball in harm's way a little bit, but he's not a very easy quarterback to fool. And Pitt fooled him all night. I don't Kyle McCord, this Syracuse offense, they didn't know what they were looking at every single play. When you have the ability to mix up the play calling and the coverage looks in the blitz packages as much as Pitt did, it's a really good way to throw off a Syracuse offense. And I think one of the optimistic talking points for Pitt going forward is that probably will be one of the better quarterbacks that you play in your schedule. If you can do that against someone like Kyle McCord in the Syracuse offense, that was a top 20 scoring offense in the country heading into this matchup, you can probably do it against a lot of other quarterbacks and offenses that we're going to see in the ACC. Now, you flip the sides and say we're used to seeing Pitt, kind of winning some shootouts. They didn't really have to, and it wasn't a bad performance by Pitt's offense in the slightest. I mean, Eli Holstein, 11 to 15, buck 8 through the air, 2 touchdowns. Desmond Reed had a few nice carries. They just didn't really have the opportunity to stay on the football field at all. And they only ran, 44 plays in this football game. They only had the football for 18 minutes. A large part of that was when Pitt was forcing turnovers, they weren't just giving the ball back to the offense, they were taking it to the house. So this was a Pitt offense that people might look at and say, oh, we got some question marks about Pitt. They only had 217 total yards. No, we've seen this Pitt offense put up a lot of yards and a lot of points. I've been very, very vocal about not only Eli Holstein, but the new offensive coordinator, Cade Ballett. Patt Narduzzi went a little bit of away from what he's been known to do as a head coach, and it's working. And you got to give him a ton of credit. Patt Narduzzi is a coach that's won a lot of football games, has had a lot of success at Pitt. I think he realized that this program after 2023 needed significant changes. And that's what he went out and did. Grabbed a really talented quarterback in the transfer portal, Eli Holstein, but more importantly, grabbed an offensive coordinator that, might put your defense in some tougher spots, but he's going to put up points on the board, make you competitive in some football games that you weren't competitive in 2023. That's what we're seeing. And you look at Pitt and say, this is going to be a really fun team to watch in the month of November because they're a complete team. They can win in a lot of different ways. If you want to try to get into a shootout with Pitt, I think Pitt can match a lot of teams on the offensive side of the football. But if you want to slow it down, make it a little bit more of an ugly, grittier game, Pitt can win on the back of their defense as well. We saw that the last 2 weeks against Syracuse and Cal. I'm fired up. Like hand up, I was not high on Pitt heading into 2024. Many of y'all know that. And then I was skeptical of Pitt throughout the first couple of weeks. And all right, how good are they? Not sure if I'm buying the stock. After Thursday night, it's hard not to respect this Pitt team and say this team can be really, really dangerous in the month of November. We'll cut it out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.